Michael Oher, portrayed of The Blind Side, has this family really close with. They adopt him, bringing him in. He ends up being pulled out of a terrible situation, homelessness, drugs around him as he was growing up, to go on to football stardom. And yesterday, the news dropped that Michael Oher is accusing the family, the Tuohys, of lying about the adoption. And he petitioned a Tennessee court yesterday that the family concocted a lie that they, quote, adopted him to enrich themselves at his expense. He says he has never made a dime off of the movie while they all got a good payout from it, and that they kind of manipulated the paperwork, kind of tricked him into signing the paperwork, to which he was not a part of the family, but instead they were conservators to where they could then strike deals to make money off of him, books, movies, etc. If he was actually adopted by the family, then he would have control over those finances. Instead, because they are conservators, he says he has not seen a dime of that. Obviously, there's two sides to every story. Interested to see, I'm sure, what they say. But I will say this. I had read his book, which was his second book, before we had him on Tuesday. And in his second book, he expresses gratitude for the family. This is before this lawsuit or this petition was filed. Expresses gratitude for the family, and that he was trying to clarify in the book that he thought the portrayal of him as this kind of timid, shy guy who didn't know much about anything, had to be kind of saved by the family, was not necessarily true. And he wanted to spread the message that you can empower yourself. And it was not out of resentment towards the family, didn't seem like anyway. He seemed to have gratitude for them and to any family that would take in foster children or homeless children, etc., but that he wanted to kind of set the record straight. I want to play for you a clip of this because, of course, I didn't know that this was coming on Monday. This was last week, and I had asked him, what part of the movie do you feel uncomfortable with and how they portrayed you? You just said you feel like you've been mislabeled sometimes, misunderstood. And I think, at least from what I've read in the book, a lot of that stems from how you were portrayed in the movie The Blind Side, and that people might have the wrong idea of your personality, number one, that you were this kind of shy wallflower, that you were timid and you had to be kind of like drawn out of your shell, when in reality, you were a workaholic, you were hyper-organized, and you were like, damn it, I'm making something of myself no matter what it takes after a rough background. Is that the big one that you feel you were mislabeled as?
I think it took away the hard work and the dedication that I created from a child, and going to school in the third grade, getting myself up, first one in the locker room, last one out. And I think the biggest for me is, being portrayed, not being able to read or write. Second grade, I was doing plays in front of the school. And I think that's one of the, when you go into a locker room and your teammates don't think that you can learn a playbook, that weighs heavy on someone, and you have to understand. I understand that the movie has given me a position. I'm honored to have the position it's given me, but, you have to understand, before I moved in with the family, I was an All-American. That's what I want the generations behind me to see in this book right here, to understand that you don't have to have someone save you and rescue you to go out and be successful. You got every tool in you. And this book right here is a playbook on life. Looking yourself in the mirror when I was 11, 12-year-old kid, telling myself, hey, everyone around you is in an even worse situation that you're in. So you're going to have to get up and do this thing yourself.
So that was from Tuesday's Jim Rome show when I was with Michael, and I posted a couple of clips on Twitter if you want to hear more of what he didn't like about the movie, because I knew that about him, but of course we didn't know that this petition was going to come down yesterday. But that's on my Twitter feed at DA on CBS if you want to watch. Also, the full interview with Michael is on YouTube as well. Just search The Jim Rome Show. My sense talking to Michael was he wasn't angry, but he did want to clarify that his hope with this book was to clarify and maybe kind of stand up for himself a little bit because, of course, it had given him a platform and had given him an ability to reach people that he really wanted to reach. He opens up the book talking about going to Brody Croyle's family's home, which is kind of like a camp for children that have been in and out of shelters. And Brody was a former Alabama quarterback and a former Kansas City Chief quarterback as well. And his parents have had this home for a long time where children that are in and out of shelters come there. They kind of give them a chance to succeed, some academic help, some financial help to try to get them on the right track. And he opened up the book talking to these kids and kind of saying, like, I can see myself in all of them, and I just wanted them to see me. Like, there is a way out when it seems so dark and hopeless. And that's my sense of what Michael Oher wanted to do with this book. I did not sense anger. I sense more of, I want to clarify, who I am and what my position here, my position here can lend itself to be. He did say, though, as we talked off air, because he was happy that I had actually read the book and we were kind of going back and forth about some of the stuff that I'd read. And he spent 45 minutes with us. So I had two different commercial breaks then after when he left to kind of talk to him off there. He alluded to something like, and wait till next week. And I didn't know what that meant. And this is obviously what it meant. So I don't know how the family would typify their arrangement. These are complicated things because, you may feel like you're giving somebody love and a roof over their head and that they come from a difficult background, so that you need to have control over things. You don't want them to get sucked down by the wrong people, or you feel like, you're now a parent instead of just kind of a guardian or whatever. At the same token, if they manipulated him to make money off of something to which he couldn't benefit, that's really wrong. It's really ethically very, very wrong. And it's seemingly what he is calling out. So I think, my big takeaway was that it felt to me that Michael Oher was walking through two different worlds. One was great football success. He was an All-American, a first-round draft pick, made good money, won a Super Bowl, played in another, had a good career, was famous for a movie. He's written 2 books, and there was a gratitude about that and an appreciation because he had come from a situation that had nearly 0 success rate. Again, by the time he was 3, he was basically shelter, foster home, or streets because his mom was on drugs. His whole family was on drugs or without work. He was on the streets. Like there was almost no hope. And he found a way to scrap his way out, and he had to be disciplined to be able to do it. He didn't necessarily just need a parachute from somebody. He wanted to say, like, hey, I had to do some of this as well. So I think there's a gratitude of I made it out of this. He's walking that world. But then also it felt to me that he's coming to terms with some of the stuff that maybe he had kind of washed away as, hey, I got out, so that's all that matters. And then maybe he was starting to kind of come to grips with some of the stuff that wasn't as hunky-dory as the movie portrays, because I would imagine, I couldn't know this, but I would imagine if you come from a situation where it is really rough. I asked him off the air, I said, so when you don't know where your meal is going to come from and your adults in your life are on drugs, so they're erratic, and you don't know what couch you sleep on, I said, is there fear? Is there, because I would imagine as a kid, security is the only thing that really can calm you, that insecurity is the ultimate fear. He says, not really a fear because you've just grown up with it, that it just is what it is. He's like, it's not really a fear. And it felt to me that you see yourself in the bright lights in a movie and everyone's slapping you on the back. Oh, my goodness, you made it out. This is great. You're a great offensive lineman. You're a great football player. And you kind of don't want to dump cold water on this wonderful story because you want to be grateful and you can't believe you made it out. And you're like, it was really dark and really ugly to get out. And so now, look, life is good. And I think people will ask, well, what took so long? It struck me, and again, I only had about an hour with him, 45 minutes to an hour to speak to him on air, off air, having read the book, et cetera, that maybe he was starting to come to grips with some of the stuff was not as great as at the time maybe everybody assumed that it was. I can't know the truth. You can't know the truth. We'll see how this unfolds. But that was just my reaction to spending some time with him. And I came away just thinking, this guy's a special guy. I'm not saying that he's a perfect guy. I'm just saying this is a special human being that could go through that and have found little things in his youth to hook onto to keep climbing. I mean, I said, do you ever go back to Memphis to go to the projects where you grew up? He's like, He goes, the people that are there are doing the same thing they were doing when I was there, and it's not, it's not. I don't know if he used the word uplifting, but it's hard. And I think we all know this feeling. Like if you go back to your hometown, and the same guys are doing the same things that you were doing 20 years ago, or they were doing 20 years ago, or 30 years ago, or 40 years ago, it's depressing. And you feel like, I got to move forward. And I think he had to do that to such an extreme level. Move forward, don't look back, because back was so treacherous that it takes time. And I think it might take therapy, and it might take years to really look back and concede of something. So I would just warn against thinking like, oh, is this just a money grab from him, or is he not grateful, or was it a money grab from the family, and why didn't he know this? Why didn't he say anything? I think there's a lot of stuff that's really tough to grapple with, and you might never, because how do you reconcile with a life where you're 3 years old and you have to fend for yourself because your mom is on crack and you don't know if there's food in the fridge? And he was kind of joking about it, but he's like, yeah, I had to steal food. I had to go to the grocery store and decide what I was going to steal today to make sure that I ate. And I said, was that a hard decision? He goes, no, because I wasn't going to starve. He's like, no, you're not going to catch me starving. So I had to steal. There was not a decision there. That's the type of story, that's the type of backstory that Michael Oher comes from.